Okay, so quick introduction to Heart of Darkness. Again, ideally, you'll watch this before class so that we can jump right into it, which is my plan. So, Heart of Darkness is written by Joseph Conrad, who's considered one of the masters of English prose, at least what we call modern English prose. Yes, and late 19th century, early 20th century would definitely be what we consider modern. Except he's not English. Not by birth, anyway. He's a naturalized English subject who's actually Polish, and came from an aristocratic family, left Poland because of political issues, took jobs on ships, on a French ship, and then on an English ship, which is where he learned English. So probably he knew French before he knew English. Obviously he would know Polish as well. And he became a naturalized English subject in 1886. So the dates aren't super important for you to know, but it is important for you to know that, English is his second or third language. So in 1890, when he was an English citizen, he got a job. So this is going to be very much like what you're going to read today in Heart of Darkness. He got a job through the recommendation of a cousin who was living in Belgium, and he got a job to pilot a steam boat, up and down the Congo River in the Congo. And the Congo, of course, at this point was under control of Belgium. Africa is divided up amongst the European nations. They have control over certain areas that they benefit from, right, in terms of the natural resources. So when he got there, of course, the pilot or the boat he's supposed to use isn't working. So he actually ended up going on a different boat, and on this other boat, there was this other boat was tasked to pick up a member of the company, of this Belgian company for which he was working, who had been ill. And so they went deep into the jungle, up the river and into the jungle, and picked this guy up. And this guy ended up dying while on his way back on the steamer. And this is this basic idea about going to pick up someone who is ill, who is deep into the jungle, is, as you will see, what we encounter in Heart of Darkness. For those cinephiles out there, Heart of Darkness is the text off of which Apocalypse Now was based. If you know Apocalypse Now, the movie, maybe I'll show you a scene from it. There's a famous scene with helicopters and some Wagner in the background. So Conrad saw what was happening, and he was, in terms of how, what was happening with the way the Europeans were interacting with and treating the native peoples there, and he was shocked by kind of really the horrors and the abuses. And he was not the only one. At the end of the 19th, early 20th century, kind of word was getting out, and people becoming more and more aware of what was happening in Africa, in particular, in terms of what the European companies were doing to the people. And so many called it, legalized robbery enforced by violence. So who was a leader of Belgium? Because it's important to remember that Marlowe, who's our main character, he's not exactly the narrator, as you'll see. He is working for a Belgian company at the time. He's not working for an English company. Keep that in your mind. He's working for a Belgian company. So the leader of Belgium at that time is Leopold II. And if you know anything about him, he was very successful in getting a lot of money out of the Congo. But he was able to set the system up so that the companies that were working there, he would basically get 50% of the profits. Death toll during the time estimated. So of course, between 2 and 15 million, I don't know what that is. That's a huge range of numbers, even if it's 2 million, right? Even if it's just on the lower end, we can see what kind of violence and destruction and death this whole enterprise, quote unquote, wreaked. I used to have images in this presentation of some of the physical horrors that, because they have photographic evidence, hands full or baskets full of hands that were cut off, as if you're not doing what you're being told, just get your hand chopped off. But I a couple of years ago, I took that out because we don't need to see more Black bodies being violated. But we need to know that it happened. Okay. So cartoon from Vanity Fair around the time. This is Leopold. Whoops. Caught with all this money. He's clearly up to something that is not on the up and up. And that was kind of generally accepted. And yet it just kind of went on for a while. So Heart of Darkness is published serially first, meaning that it's published in parts in a magazine called Blackwood's Magazine. And so you'll notice that Heart of Darkness is broken up into 3 parts: part 1, part 2, part 3. And so it was published that way. But then he also published it. Conrad also had it published as a novel, all put together in 1902. So first published in the very end of the 19th century and published as a novel in the beginning of the 20th. So the time that Conrad is writing about here was the time that the readers, that in which it was published, that was their time. So the things that they were talking about, that he speaks about, or through Marlowe at least, would have all been very recognizable to the audience of the time. So Leopold, of course, frames what he's doing as being a work of great civilization, right? A great work of civilization. For the sake of civilization, he's doing what he's doing. And of course, this goes along with, the white man's burden to, save all these poor savages. We'll hear that line expressed by Marlowe's aunt in the novel, not a cousin as it was for Conrad, but his aunt, Marlowe's aunt, who's the one who helps get Marlowe get the job, talks about the idea that, we're going into this place in order to save these poor savages from themselves and convert them to Christianity, et cetera, and do all this good. So he said about Heart of Darkness, its experience pushed a little and only a very little beyond the actual facts of the case, for which the perfectly legitimate, I believe, purpose of bringing it home to the minds and the bosoms of the readers. So because a lot of the things that we'll read here are massively horrifying. And he said about his experience in the Congo, before the Congo, I was just a mere animal. And so you want to think about that, because what he sees there is just absolute horrors. And so we want to think about, okay, so why is it that witnessing those things and being witness to those abuses and that violence, why would that change him from what he had before considered to be a mere animal into something else? So when he was blissfully ignorant, I guess he was a mere animal. So ultimately, this is going to be I'm not really blowing anything for you here, but ultimately, thematically, of Heart of Darkness is that life is a choice of nightmares. Guys, there's nothing hopeful to be found in this novel. Zip, zilch, zero, none. So I for those of you who take this very hard, I'm sorry, but there's nothing good to be found here. Anyway, so your choice of nightmares for life is: 1, you can become a purely commercially minded, I want to make some money, and nothing else really matters, kind of hollow man. And you're going to find that, and T.S. Eliot uses that term, the hollow men. And he actually also uses Mr. Kurtz. Oh, never mind. I'm going to give that line. Never mind. I'm not going to blow it that far. Anyway, who uses Africa and its people only for financial gain because it gets you some money and, quote unquote, contributes to the economy? Or do you become a self-tortured, mad, and corrupted idealist, right? Those are your 2 choices in life. Choose one. So, which is not really a full kind of life as well either, which is also hollow in itself. So here's the deal. So Conrad recognizes the evils of colonialism, right? So there's some seriously horrible things, right? Does that mean that he is not a racist? No. He's a product of his time, guys. He's a late 19th, early 20th century, white European, and that's just it's not really. I don't know that we can say, oh, Conrad is a racist and therefore I don't believe this at all. Conrad's a racist and therefore we don't read him. We're going to encounter small bits of offensive language in this novel, not a lot. More along the line of in terms of racial epithets. More disturbing is his portrayal of the Native Africans, and that's where we come into some kind of accusations of racism, which I think is correct. We'll read Chinua Achebe's criticism of Conrad. Achebe takes the tack that, well, everything about how the Africans here is portrayed is so horrible. Why would you want to read this novel? It's terrible. I am not Achebe's opinion about not reading a novel like that, like we're about to read. But he does absolutely have a point about how the African people are portrayed, and so we are definitely going to talk about that. But I'm not into not reading something for that reason, and I hope you're not too. But we have to recognize it and look at it and talk about it. But that's not going to be the main. I mean, it's absolutely a facet of the novel, but that's not going to be something that I think absolutely overtakes it. Although it's absolutely there, kind of like with Othello, right? Is the racism there? Yeah, for sure, right? Is that everything that the play was about? No, right? Do we need to acknowledge the racism and talk about the racism and recognize its presence and see how it affects things? Yes, right? And to ignore it would be a mistake. Same with this novel, right? We can't ignore it. We can't say it doesn't exist because it does. Okay, so that's that. I'm looking forward to reading this novel with you guys. It's absolutely one of my favorite things to teach. And I'll talk more about how we're going to go about doing it in class today. Thank you.